In 2015, Europe faced a massive influx of refugees and migrants fleeing war, poverty, and persecution in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. The crisis peaked when over 1 million people arrived, mostly by sea and land routes, seeking safety and better lives in wealthy European nations. Germany, led by Chancellor Angela Merkel, announced an open-door policy in late August 2015, declaring "Wir schaffen das," or "we can do this." Merkel suspended the Dublin regulation, which required asylum seekers to apply in the first EU country they entered, and instead allowed hundreds of thousands to travel directly to Germany from Hungary, Austria, and other transit points. This decision came after images of drowned Syrian toddler Alan Kurdi washed up on a Turkish beach shocked the world on the 2nd of September 2015, sparking global sympathy and calls for action. Germans responded with remarkable generosity. Volunteers, known as Willkommenskultur, ed. T. Schong, arrivals at train stations in Munich and other cities with applause, food, water, clothing, and toys. Charities, churches, and ordinary citizens donated millions of euros in aid. Local governments set up temporary shelters in gyms, schools, and tent camps, providing beds, medical care, and basic necessities. Language courses, Haitian programs and job training were offered free of charge to help newcomers settle. Taxpayers funded billions in social benefits, including housing allowances, child support, and healthcare. Many Europeans viewed this as a moral duty, a chance to atone for historical wrongs, and a boost to aging populations needing young workers. Among the arrivals were thousands from Syria's in the brutal civil war that began in 2011 after President Bashar al-Assad cracked down on Arab Spring protests. The conflict killed over 500,000 people, displaced 13 million, and destroyed cities like Aleppo and Homs. Families sold everything to pay smugglers $5,000 to $10,000 per person for dangerous boat crossings from Turkey to Greek islands or overland through the Balkans. Others came from Afghanistan, Iraq, Eritrea, Somalia, and North Africa, citing war, persecution, or economic hardship. By October 2015, Germany registered over 10,000 arrivals daily, straining resources, but initial goodwill remained high. However, cracks appeared as numbers swelled. Criminal elements exploited the chaos. Some migrants were not refugees, but economic opportunists or even extremists, posing risks. Background checks were minimal due to volume. Many arrived without passports or with fake Syrian documents. Priority under asylum rules. German authorities process claims slowly, leading to backlogs of hundreds of thousands living in limbo on state support. Tensions built in smaller incidents, first in Cologne and other cities. Reports emerged of pickpocketing and thefts targeting crowded public spaces. Migrants, some North African men, known as bis from Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, who faced low approval rates for asylum, turned to crime after rejection. They formed loose gangs operating in train stations and shopping areas, stealing phones, wallets, and bags. Police noted a rise in shoplifting and burglaries in migrant-heavy areas like Duisburg and Berlin. The situation exploded on New Year's Eve, the 31st of December 2015, in Cologne, a historic city of 1 million. On the Rhine River, thousands gathered in the square between Cologne Cathedral and the main train station for fireworks and celebrations. Alcohol flowed freely as revelers partied into the night. Around 1,000 to 2,000 young men, mostly asylum seekers from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and North Africa, gathered in groups near the station platforms, and exits became choked with people. What followed was a night of chaos and violence, described later as unprecedented in modern Germany. Women reported being surrounded, groped, kissed, and robbed by groups of 10 to 30 men at a time. Attackers used fireworks as weapons, firing them into crowds to create panic and distraction. In the melee, purses were snatched, jewelry torn off, and clothing ripped. One victim, a 28-year-old named Michelle, recounted how men grabbed her breasts and buttocks, while others stole her phone. She screamed for help, but police seemed absent or overwhelmed. Similar scenes unfolded in Hamburg, Stuttgart, Ran, Erfurt, and other cities, but Cologne was the epicenter. By morning, over 100 women filed complaints. At the central police station, numbers grew daily. As more victims came forward emboldened by media coverage, by the 4th of January 2016, police recorded 121 sexual assaults, including 2 rapes and over 1,000 total crimes, mostly thefts, by mid-January. Complaints exceeded 1,100, with 446 alleging sexual offences and 664 property crimes. Victims ranged from teens to women in their 40s. Many German but some tourists or migrants themselves. Eyewitnesses described organised tactics groups, formed human walls, to isolate women from friends or partners. Then altered them while accomplices picked pockets. One volunteer aid worker, Katja, who helped refugees earlier that year, witnessed the events, and later said she saw Syrian men she recognised from shelters participating, shocking her sense of gratitude. Repaid police. Radio logs leaked later revealed office RS calling for reinforcements as early as 11:30 p.m, reporting Taharusha, Arabic term for collective harassment, known from Egypt Tahrir Square protests. In 2011, yet the police response was disastrously slow. Only 200 officers patrolled downtown Cologne. That night, far fewer than for a typical football match. The central station locked its doors at mid-gate, trapping people inside with attackers. Initial reports downplayed the chaos. Cologne Police Chief Wolfgang Albers issued a press release on the 1st of January, claiming the night was largely peaceful. A statement later retracted amid outrage. Interior Minister Ralph Jager admitted communication failures and suspended Albers on the 8th of January. Media coverage ignited a firestorm. Initial reports by state broadcasters like WDR avoided mentioning migrant origins, fearing racism accusations. But social media exploded with videos, photos, and victim testimonies, forcing mainstream outlets to catch up. Newspaper like Bild ran headlines: Cologne sex mob and Merkel's open door backfires. Politicians from the right-wing AfD party demanded border closures and deportations. Chancellor Merkel condemned the attacks as disgusting and called for swift justice, but defended her policy, saying most refugees were decent. Investigations revealed many suspects were recent arrivals. Over 200 identified by January came from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Iraq, and Syria with asylum applications pending or rejected. Only 3 were convicted by 2017 due to lack of evidence, poor lighting, and victim reluctance to testify. Deportations proved difficult under EU laws protecting even criminals from war zones. Public trust eroded as surveys showed 60% of Germans felt less safe. The Cologne events marked a turning point in European migration policy. Merkel's approval ratings dropped. Borders reopen with controls in Sweden, Denmark, and Austria. The EU struck a deal with Turkey in March 2016, paying €6 billion to stem flows. Arrivals plummeted from 13 million in 2015 to 200,000 in 2016. In Cologne itself, scars lingered. The cathedral square installed more cameras and police patrols. In ICE groups organised self-defence classes and pepper spray sales. Soared. Feminist activists criticised victim blaming, while others debated cultural clashes, some pointing to patriarchal attitudes in certain countries where women face harassment routinely. Integration debates intensified with calls for mandatory values courses, teaching respect for women and rule of law. Years later, in 2020, a study by the University of Zurich analysed crime data, finding North African migrants committed disproportionate property crimes, but Syrians integrated better with lower rate. The events fueled populism. AfD entered parliaments across Germany and anti-immigrant protests. By Pegida grew. Victims like Michelle suffered PTSD, anxiety, and depression. A class action lawsuit against the city for negligence failed, but symbolic apologies came from officials. The night exposed vulnerabilities in mass migration, rapid intake without vetting, and naive assumptions about gratitude. Europeans who opened homes, hearts, and wallets felt betrayed. Volunteers stopped helping, fearing risks. Charities reported donor fatigue. Taxpayers questioned billions spent when locals struggled. One Munich family who hosted a Syrian man for months discovered he stole jewelry, pawning it for cash. Similar stories emerged. A church in Berlin found donated clothes sold online by beneficiaries in Hamburg. A group of Afghan teens, housed in a youth centre, attacked staff. C. Kekit money in Duisburg. Moroccan gangs controlled drug corners, clashing with police. These incidents, though involving a minority, tainted perceptions of all migrants. Media amplified negative cases, creating a feedback loop. Defenders argued most refugees contributed positively. By 2025, over 60% of 2015 arrivals worked, paying taxes and starting businesses. Syrian doctors filled hospital shortages. Afghan interpreters aided NATO legacies. Success stories, like a Damascus baker opening Cologne's best falafel shop, showed integration potential. Yet the betrayal narrative persisted. Polls in 2023 showed 55% of Germans wanted stricter asylum rules, citing Cologne as a cautionary tale. Merkel left office in 2021 with her legacy divided, praised for humanity, criticized for hubris. The events highlighted complexities of compassion versus security, generosity versus gullibility. Europe learned that helping the vulnerable requires safeguards, vetting, integration and enforcement. Without them, goodwill sours into resentment, dividing societies for generations. New Year's Eve became a symbol of that hard lesson, etched in public memory long after fireworks faded.